the tide is turning, hear the sound. It's our home, it's our fight. We stand as one, we'll make it right. We face the flood, the fire, the strain. Independence rise, we'll break their chain. Monaro strong, we won't be swayed. Truth and justice never fade.
Nicole, thank you for coming to the Monaro Zone tonight. I know you're so busy, so I really appreciate the time you've given to me. You're not just a vice president of the Snowy Monaro Ratepayers and Residents Association, but I've also learned that you used to be an interior designer. Is that right?
Yes, look, I've done a lot of things in my life, and I guess I know where this conversation is going to go. I'll have to say that my first career, apart from being a photographer professionally, I got out of that even as a teenager and went into building houses because my dad was a builder. So I've owned property since I was a teenager. Can't think how many properties I've owned, probably a dozen over the years, over probably 6 different council areas.
And how does our council rate compared to those other areas?
Oh, Chris, you can't ask that question. All I can say is I domicile here, but I still am based in Queensland, and there's absolutely no way on earth that I'll be investing here at this point in time with what I've seen since I've been involved with the Ratepayers Association.
Okay,
It's a debacle.
Well, let's jump into that. But first, let's get to know you a little bit more. Where are you from and what brought you to the Snowy Monaro region?
I like this story, actually, so thank you for asking. I'm from Queensland, but prior to that, my parents came over on the boats from Holland, and they all landed in the camps and all very quickly toddled up to Queensland because in Holland it's just raining all the time, apparently, and they just headed for the sunshine, and there wasn't enough of it down this way. So I think I just always had Dutch blood, and I really suffered the summers in Queensland ever since I was a little kid. So my favourite story is that I found a hole in that pesky rabbit fence that they have up there, and I escaped. So I just always dreamed, even as a kid, of living somewhere where I could see snow out of the window. And as much as where I have my house up in Queensland is equally as stunningly beautiful up there as it is here. But I tend to get there between seasons, and so I can ski here in winter, and I can hide away in summer, and for the rest, I'm backwards and forwards.
I totally share your sentiment. The heat and the mosquitoes scare me from Queensland as well. So, what is the Snowy Monaro Ratepayers and Residents Association, and why did it come about?
Well, it was already in existence, and I think we all really, there was a group of people in the community realised that we needed to have some way of getting together and discussing issues that were happening, and the Ratepayers was there, and so we got involved with the original Ratepayers Association, and I guess Andrew was always very Andrew Thaler was always very out there, talking about all of the things that were wrong. And I wasn't aware of any of the things that were wrong because at that point I was still sort of, feeling my way around whether I wanted to invest here or not. And then we started to see all of the things that were, pretty ordinary as far as the way other people had been treated with their properties. And I also think, as much as I love the lake here, with the interior design business that I had, it was actually wasn't just interior design. We were solely boat interior designers. My clients were mainly, France, we did a boat for the owner of Clarence Cosmetics. I did a fit out for the owner of Clarence Cosmetics in one of his boats. A lot of our clients are in America. I had to go to the Miami Boat Show every year. I did a lot of travel. I've just been everywhere a lot. And a lot of third world countries too. And, when I'm traipsing around beautiful parks and gardens in third world countries, and then I walk around the lake here, I think it's an absolute disgrace. It's a mess. And yes, you cannot look at all of the weeds everywhere and focus on the lake, but I don't know, I just compare it to all of the other places in the world I've been. And this is, we get told we're the lucky country, but I think we've been hypnotised with that statement. I don't think it's really a lucky country at all.
So what are the core goals and campaigns currently being pursued by the association?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, look, I think since Andrew Thaler was elected to the council, we've sort of achieved a lot by even being at that point. And so rather than try and constantly get people to come in and come to our meetings, we really need people to come to the council meetings. And that's our goal now, is really people need to know what's going on. We grew up realising or thinking that she'll be right, mate, and the government wouldn't do that to us, were two classic statements. And it's sad that I think we've all got to become fit enough to start taking responsibility again for everything.
What are some examples of failures in local council?
Look, that's a great question. I've, I just wish I was, financially retired, where I could constantly spend all day, every day, talking to the people and videoing and creating and getting the stories out, because there's so much of it and we just don't have the time. I don't know how you get to do all the things that you've been doing. You're absolutely amazing getting these stories out, because ever since I've been connected to the Ratepayers, it's been a dream to do this, and there's so much of it.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Ratepayers, because I recall when I had my council troubles, it was the Ratepayers Association that supported me. And so that's why I want to give back to the community for all their help when I had trouble.
Yeah, and I think your story needs to be told too, because that's another phenomenal one. And what I love, sadly, is when you see the patterns. It's the same story over and over and over of people being wronged and things not being right and something being a bit off, and no one can quite work it out. And I see it also with the constructions going on. It's like, I don't understand the cost of that toilet block in Bombala. I don't understand the cost of that library that we have in Jindabyne and the information centre in Cooma. It's like one thing after another after another. I come from a building background. I was literally born on a building site. I was with my dad from before I could walk, when he'd go out and do his quoting and he'd be building, and I was on the tools. As a kid, I loved it. If I was a bloke, I'd be a builder. Instead, I renovated many, many, many homes. But I'm seeing things that are just not right. You can start seeing the patterns.
Can you provide some examples of things that aren't right in this region?
Yeah, like I'm aware of your story, the Charles Colano story. Then we've got Matt out of Mikalago's story.
What's the Charles Colano story for those that don't know?
The most breathtaking part of his story is that he was locked in to his property and his gateway was barricaded. Like it's too flabbergasting. It's too unbelievable, the whole thing.
For me, I found it amazing how you could get 6 councillors to vote away your land. that they could confiscate your land and use it for public good without any remuneration to you.
Yeah, correct. And also someone else's good, like the neighbour. It's like his land down towards the creek and the lake is just trashed.
What was the other example you raised?
The other, what was that one? The Michelego.
What's happening there?
Well, with Matt, and he's been watching his land be absolutely decimated by the overflow of whatever and everything that's coming from the neighbour. And then to have a, what was it? Not a gag order. You had a
Section 203.
Yeah, to be told to shut up and go away, basically, or we'll sue the pants off you for speaking out against what was going on. And it's all obvious. And it's just these patterns of just shut up and go away. And we'll forget about it. And these constant, I've been, I'm the one responsible for the Better Than Netflix, the Better Than Netflix graphic design ads on Facebook. And, the original intention was just to hopefully encourage people to start taking some interest in the council meetings. Created a monster, I think.
No, that flows into what I wanted to ask, which was, how can residents get involved?
Yeah, look, I'm fortunate that I've always worked for myself, and I've always enjoyed solitude. So in holidays and weekends, I like to work, and when it's quiet, I can come out through the week. So I don't have to work through the weekdays 9 to 5 if I don't want to, which means I can be at council meetings, and and I can work till midnight, and I can get up late, and it's lovely. But I understand a lot of people are in the 9 to 5, and it's impossible to get to the council meetings. I can't imagine myself, because some of them go so long because there's so many issues that are being brought to attention that haven't been dealt with in the previous councils.
Some people online have said a lot of these motions are frivolous and time-wasting. Is that what you believe too?
Look, yeah, no, not at all. Absolutely not. These council meetings are going on forever because these are issues that weren't dealt with in the past, and that's that. And if anyone wants to argue that matter, they really need to come and sit in a meeting. And yeah, they go on for a long time, and I understand. And I probably wouldn't sit in front of the videos that they record, because you don't get the concept of what's going on in the room. You don't see all of the bad behaviour and the eye rolling and the sniggering and the rest of it when you're just getting that council view. Plus, they will edit those videos if there's something in there that they don't like. Swear words have been removed.
I believe a motion was attempted to be passed to prevent that editing taking place, but it was voted down.
I am devastated at the amount of motions that are knocked back that are all about transparency.
Why do you think they keep knocking back these transparency motions?
Look, I think they're just very, very not happy that the status quo is changing, and they're just very happy to do what they're doing the way they're doing it. And in a lot of ways, I don't understand, because it's just, I don't have that, that mindset that these people do. It's not healthy, in my opinion, but it's not right either.
I tend to agree. I don't understand how it could be in anyone's benefit to have less transparency and less accountability in public office. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I find the easiest way to operate in life is tell the truth, because then you don't have to remember your lies.
Well, let's switch gears and talk about what happened last night. There was a Meet the Candidates event in Jindabyne, where you got to meet a lot of the candidates running for federal election for the Eden Monaro. What was your initial impressions of that event?
Oh, look, I've been to a few of them now, and they're always really interesting. And I love the contrast between all of the different candidates. It's always very educational. It's eye-opening. You know, like we all have our judgments. And I have my judgments about the Labor and the Liberals and all the major parties that, you know, in the early days I would have voted for many, many years ago. And yeah, it was nice to listen to them speak, to let these, you know, people, you know, that they've all got good intentions in certain areas. I don't know if they, you know what they're supporting really in the big picture, but I think they all mean well. I think everyone's doing it. They believe they're doing things for the right reasons.
Were there any highlights that really stuck with you?
Highlights. Look, I have to say that Andrew's always entertaining, you know, even when he's challenging, even when you go, oh my God, did he really say that? He's smart, he's sharp, and he's entertaining. And I think one thing I will say about last night was this snap election, this sort of dodgy behaviour of throwing an election into the ring with, you know, just a month to prepare is just bad behaviour. No one's prepared. And I think that showed in everyone's speeches last night too. It's like everyone spoke pretty well, but I've heard better in the past from all different candidates. I think everyone's a bit caught unawares with, you know, their angle and what they want to present. And I think independence as well. It's like, it's all right for the Liberals and Labors and the others to say, you know, this is what we've done and pat themselves on the back for all the good things they've done so far and the evidence how good they are so that you'll vote for them again and rah, rah, rah. You know, the independents that haven't been in have got their work cut out for them that way. But I think one thing I really noticed, I really loved last night was the applauding started with the independents. Like, there was no applause until the independents started speaking, and everyone was, happy to hear what they had to say.
I was told that there was a question regarding domestic violence towards women that came up. Did you have a point of view on how the candidates responded to that question?
Yeah. Yes, the human condition, it's something I've been studying for at least 25 or 30 years. That it could almost look like it was thrown in intentionally. And it's random. It was random. There's so many questions to ask that are probably, it's as important as anything. And I know more than anybody else, I've been a victim of domestic violence myself many, many years ago, which is what turned my life around and things that I do today because of what I went through supporting men and women who go through domestic violence now. So I know it's a very important subject, but it's not going to save Australia from sinking. So it was a bit, considering some of the other things that have happened recently and the constant picking of Andrew and his behaviour and making him the villain. It seemed a bit odd. And look, she might have been there, absolutely. I didn't meet her. She might have been there very legitimately on her own, and she was very genuine. And I was highly impressed with Andrew's response. The fact of the matter is, and I know this for a fact, and I will argue it with anybody, and I have actually argued it with the police, it's not something that men do, it's people. Psychopathic behaviour is a human condition, and women get away with it more than men because men don't go to the police when they've been victimised. I know a lot of men who are victims. My brother was one and he's now dead. And it's not to say that, it doesn't need to be dealt with. I think one of the others also said, it's to come up. It was like similar to a net zero ridiculous statement. It was to have zero domestic violence. It's delusional to even say that. And if they want that, they need to start looking at mental health. And the whole mental health system is broken, just like the health system is broken. You know, in my opinion, it could be very easily fixed, but it's never going to fix with the systems in place that are here now, and it's never going to be fixed through any major party, because they are going to stick to their ancient, old, smelly, dinosauric systems that never worked, and yeah, nothing will change.
Were there any other questions last night that caught your interest?
Look, I have to say, because I love self-development, and that's the field I work in now, that last question was really my favourite. But gosh, there was lots of interesting questions. I think the Chamber did a really good job last night of putting that event on. There were lots of questions, and I think the night ran a lot later than they'd planned. And you know, I think everyone was engaged. I think it was a really, really good event.
Now, the topic of the Uni Party has come up quite frequently, especially amongst the local independents. How would you define Uni Party, and does it currently apply to our political situation?
Hell yeah. Oh, gosh, you know, when I was young, I always wanted to be wise, and now I'm old and I feel wise in some areas, especially when you ask that sort of question. When I was young, and I was very capitalist and self-employed since a teenager, and I used to work as a press photographer straight out of college. In fact, I didn't wait to finish college because they were dragging on too long, stretching everything out unnecessarily. So I went and started working as a photographer, and I was working for the local paper, and there was one side of this is in Queensland, there was one side of the highway was all very lower socioeconomic, and the other side of the highway was better. You know, like the homes were decent. There was a lot of social housing on one side, and I noticed, you know, I was the eldest of 6 kids, still living at home with mum and dad, and we lived on the good side of the highway, probably only because Dad could build a house. And but working for the newspaper, I spent almost all of my time on the other side of the highway. That's where all of this stuff was always happening. It's why, you know, there was always drama. There was always something going on, and it was just an observation as a teenager, 17 years old, 17, 18. I would have been 18 when I left college, and it was just an observation. But over the years, you know, being self-employed, we just sort of gravitated to. It seemed obvious that we were more liberal, and you know, everyone on that other side of the highway was always bagging out everyone on the other side of the highway, which was, you know, very hurtful, because I thought we worked just as hard as anyone else, and I'd never judged anyone on one side or the other, but felt like I was being constantly judged. So I really never grew up with a high opinion of the whole Labor concept, and there was a big difference between Liberal and Labor. Maybe it was that highway, but you know, I had friends, dear friends on both sides of the highway. We didn't judge each other, but you know, when it came to politics, I guess we came from that era of "she'll be right, mate, don't worry about it, the government will look after you and you don't need to do anything." So we didn't really do much. You know, we donkey voted when we had to vote. We were never taught how to vote. We weren't taught about politics in school. I vaguely remember that we didn't even have a constitution, in my opinion. And you know, growing up in the 70s at school, you know, it's almost like that's when all of this, you know, suspect behaviour started. Was back then. It's like, don't look at the Constitution, pretend it's not there, and don't argue with us. And they were slowly changing things. There's no difference now. It's very obvious. You don't need to look too close to see that it doesn't make any difference one or the other. In the olden days, even with local or state politics, it seemed to be that every time, this is just my opinion, but was my opinion as a young person who was self-employed and hung around with lots of other entrepreneurial people my whole life. Every time the Labor got in, they'd get out and we'd be broke. And every time the Liberals got in, they'd build up the coffers again. It's like they were better at business. And it seemed to me logical because, you could understand because you're in business yourself. So, but now it's not even Liberal or Labor, there's something else. It's a higher level of something else that's come in and infiltrated the whole thing. It's not, I don't think anyone in Australia is in control of Australia. There's something coming from a higher level.
Do you think it's strange that the Liberal Party, in this case, Joanne van der Plat, would preference Labor ahead of all the independents?
Well, I think this just confirms what I was just saying, hey? It's like, I don't see any of their policies or anything any different. It's all pretty much the same thing. It's quite interesting how it's changed in the last 40 years. Mm.
Now, you mentioned that last night's Jindabyne Chamber of Commerce event was well run. The Chamber has come under a bit of scrutiny recently regarding their awards evening last month. Did you want to give some context to what happened last month?
Yeah, look, I think it's pretty sad that, obviously personal issues get in the way of business. It just wasn't very business-minded, in my opinion. I was planning to go. A lot of us went, I thought, I don't need to go. I've just been to so many fancy do's over my life. I've got, plenty of ball gowns and all sorts of things, still reminiscing from the days when we used to swan around on these incredible events. And I'm retired from all of that sort of thing now. I just don't need to go to an awards night for something in a small country town. It's cute, and I like to support business, but we were all invited to the table as a thank you for our contributions to all of with all of the voluntary work that we do in various areas, and so it was. I thought, okay, but to get an email the way we got to say that the tickets were being returned was inappropriate. First of all, it had nothing to do with me, and that was sent to me. It was a grift between the Chamber and Andrew. And I know there was the Rocky factor, and but as you see at every council event, except for that last one, which wasn't even Andrew, but Andrew does operate civilly in public. He's very, very astute. He's very sharp. He's very gracious. He's entertaining. He's not aggressive. He's opinionated. You might not like his opinions. I've given him what for every now and then when I don't agree with where he's going. Yeah, you can very easily tell him to pull his head in, and he's not going to bite your head off. He's very well, he's a very interesting person. He will listen when you speak. The only thing I've ever noticed with Andrew is when you're not being honest. If there's a trust issue.
Some people have commented that the Chamber has recently become too closely aligned with political interests.
Yeah, look, there's a bit of history there with me and the Chamber. There were a couple of Meet the Candidate events in the past where they just wanted to invite the majors, and I really took offence to that because, who are we to say the majors are the only ones to listen to. That's being political. It's not right. I mean, at least give everybody a chance to say no, yes or no, whether they want to come, but invite every member. And if we're a part of a, you know, a business group that for the, you know, public good, I mean, it's not doing the right thing by the community by just having the majors there. And there was never any decent reason for it, in my opinion. So I pushed for the fact that it's not appropriate to be political or, you know, biased. It looked biased. Whether it was or not doesn't matter. It looked very biased.
Well, I think we're coming to the exciting part where a lot of listeners want to hear more. You were one of the Jindabyne residents that were present at the council meeting where a supposed brawl broke out. Would the term brawl be the right word to use?
Chris, we're going to bring this up. Okay, it's it was. Look, I guess I'm fortunate enough in a way that I've never had to deal with violence in my life. So for it to be sitting there and happen to be right at you, it was traumatic for me because I'm just not used to that sort of thing. I also don't think it's necessary. Anger is an amazing emotion until you lash out and point it towards others. It really should be just a signal that something's out of alignment within yourself. But there's that one man that was there, and he's always there, and they're always triggering, teasing, provoking, heckling. And that event that happened after the meeting was, you know, as an observer of staying calm, sitting back, perusing the whole scene, this one man was a magnet to Andrew. This guy was just nuts. And it had nothing to do with Andrew at any point, except that his wife was heckling him at the end of the meeting.
Now, it's strange that you say that because when I read the Snowy Mountain News and the Sydney Morning Herald articles, they appeared to frame it, in my understanding, that the incident was a reaction to a motion by Andrew Thaler. Are you saying that this incident is not really about that motion?
I don't think it would have mattered what motion was there. And maybe they were more wound up than normal, but they heckle at every meeting. They're sitting right behind him and they heckle him and they're making nasty comments to the point where he's saying, you know, he's bringing it to the attention of the chair because it's inappropriate.
And I heard that they don't just heckle Andrew, but they also heckle his wife. Did you witness any of that?
Oh, look, Alisa and I were both very, very distraught at the events. You know, it's just being in close quarters with it's an unknown factor. You just don't know how far it's going to go.
Do you recall any of the words that they used on Alisa during that time?
No, I don't actually recall those. There was an incredible amount of things that were said. It was a multifaceted issue. And it was never, you know, they were doing their usual heckling of Andrew, but they were winding it up after the meeting. You know, their videos had been turned off. I was sitting at the back of the room with, I was sitting beside Mick. You know, to me, I just want to stay away from that sort of, you know, bad behaviour. It's just awful.
For those that don't know, who is Mick? And what happened to him?
Well, Mick was the guy whose phone was taken. So I was sitting right beside him. And the only reason this whole thing happened is like we could see this heckling winding up because this woman's husband came up. You know, that they were for no reason. And Andrew was just standing there. He was just standing there. He was being civil. Alisa was just not far away. They were packing up to go. And she was just picking at him, heckling. And then her husband came over and he did the same and they just flicked their hands and said, just go away, go away. They were just nasty, nasty. I didn't hear the conversation. I saw the behaviour. Mick and I both put our cameras on because we could see it escalating. We thought, just in case something goes pear-shaped, we videoed the scene, not the man, the scene. He was, I don't know, 4 or 5 metres away. He was, up in the front of the chairs. We were at the back of the room. We were videoing the scene, the whole scene, from wall to wall, the whole room, because we could see there was a possibility that something could happen.
And then what happened?
I think it was David Rawlings came and stood between the two men, just to try and put some space between them, because these guys were just leaning into Andrew being nasty. It was awful. So David Rawlings came in and sort of separated them, and at that point, the man sort of gazed over to the back of the room and obviously noticed that we were videoing, or that Mick was videoing. And he just claimed that they're videoing and they're not allowed to, words to that effect. And then David Rawlings said, "Can you please stop videoing?" And I mean, as a professional photographer, not that I do it anymore, but I just know the laws. I'm pretty sure there's no law against videoing in public. And I know we're not supposed to video because that's at their request through the meetings, but the meeting was over. So, and in my opinion, if I knew I wasn't going to be exiting that room very quickly, I would have been videoing for my own safety. And I'm videoing because I've seen this, again, these patterns, that's predatory patterns of, Andrew being attacked because he's constantly exposing corruption. And I've been there before with one of the other situations where if he didn't have the video, the he said and she said would have been, the outcome would have been very different if the video evidence hadn't been there. So I was very happy to be doing it.
So what happened when Mick refused to turn off the camera?
Well, the guy came over and he was highly aggressive, and that's the moment where I just really just froze, and almost blanked out. It was just so like I felt very threatened, even though it wasn't focused at me. It was right beside me, and he was basically saying to Mick, come on, let's go outside. I'll see what you're made of, sort of thing. He was basically wanting to punch the guy up. He was wanting to punch Mick up for videoing him when he wasn't videoing him. He was videoing the scene, and it was just provoked. The guy, it was just mad. It was madness in this guy's eyes. He just went from one side of the room to the other, and he was just like a rabid bull.
Now, according to the Sydney Morning Herald, a man took a phone with the intention of placing it on a table after being filmed. Is that accurate?
I'd love to speak with that journalist.
Jordan Baker.
I can say 2 words. What table? There was no table. He was heading for the door. There was no other, clearly he's just mouthing off all sorts of different things since the event. It's very clear, with his manner and the aggression, that was one step after the other, constant aggression. I don't believe Mick would have got his phone back. I think it would have been smashed on the street or something like that. That would have been more in line with his behaviour than going and putting it on a table. When you're talking about, human behaviour, there was nothing in his behaviour that suggested that he might have gone and put it on a table. He had such a tight grip of it, and Mick's a strong bloke too. Like trying to pry that phone out of that man's hand took quite a lot. He had no intention of letting it go. And he had no intention of putting it on a table. There was no table to put it on.
From my understanding, Mick is recovering from an ankle injury and so wasn't able to chase the offender. How was the offender stopped?
Well, look, oh, Chris, this happened all so fast. Like, I didn't even see the snatching. It was so fast that he grabbed it, you know. And then suddenly there was 3 or 4 people all there. I mean, Mick was holding one arm. Andrew was holding his other arm because Andrew was worried that he was going to punch Mick, and he knows Mick's hobbling on a broken leg. And, you know, there was no punching or anything else. It was just everyone was holding on, grappling to stop, you know, any physical assault. But then, you know, David Rawlings came back again and got in the middle of them again. And Mick got his phone back out of his clutches. But he was just constant. It was like this guy was a magnet for Andrew. It was bizarre to watch.
The media has painted Andrew as the main instigator in this incident. Is that a fair assessment?
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. And you know, I've seen other events too where he just stands there. The problem is he stands there and he doesn't back down and walk away, but he will stand, and he has every right to stand in his space.
I believe the police response to this incident was, one of the questions was, what's Andrew's role in this?
Yeah, I find that, you know, a clear sign of, I don't know, bias, agenda. You know, it's like something weird going on there with the police, for sure. It's not right.
There's also a second element that isn't really getting much attention, and that's Councillor Summers claims that she diffused the situation. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, no. Look, I was just a few metres away from the whole thing and videoed the whole thing from behind, so I didn't see her facial expressions or her fisticuffs, but her hands weren't anywhere, you know, they must have been up in front of her chest because I didn't see them. It was the most bizarre thing I've really seen. It's like, and it wasn't until I re-looked at the video that I'd taken that I saw it. I thought, what on earth is going on? She's come in, David Rawlings was keeping the 2 guys apart. She came in behind, almost like tapped him on the back and moved in, like as if this older woman is going to have a better chance of fixing this situation than another man. And Mick Pollard's aggressive, you know, leaning in, punchy, angry nature just stopped. And she was doing her fisticuff thing to Andrew. She should have been facing Mick Pollard. He was the aggressor, but she was treating Andrew like the aggressor. It was so bizarre. It was like this weird act.
So if my understanding is correct, she didn't help stop the thievery of the phone, the
No,
theft
it was
of the
already
phone.
done. He'd already got his phone back, and it seemed like she was dramatising it looked like she was dramatising to make a story that didn't exist.
And she went on to threaten Andrew and his wife, I understand?
Well, prior to moving in, she called Andrew a coward. Now, is that provoking? I think so.
This is as he was trying to retrieve somebody's phone?
As David Rawlings was getting between them, she came up and she called Andrew a coward.
After he had just helped prevent a theft from occurring?
Yeah. He was holding on to Mick Pollard's arm to stop any aggression from taking place.
That's strange because she will go on to quote in the Sydney Morning Herald, "My instincts kicked in that diffused the situation in the moment."
Yeah. So this burly, rough, aggressive man, and then she comes in and he's like puts his arms down to the side and lets her take over. Doesn't make sense. This older lady, against this rough, burly, aggressive, thuggery sort of bloke. And it's like he was part of it. He's gone and let her take over. It was bizarre.
Are you saying that they probably were working together in some sense?
Well, there was...
A tag
It
team
looked
WWE.
like there was a narrative being put in place. It certainly didn't look like it was real. And it was hilarious, the way she came in. It could not have been serious. Could not have been serious. No woman would go in and stand in between two, strong burly blokes like that. Not at her age and her fitness level. Absolutely not.
Tanya Higgins.
It was a scene.
Tanya Higgins describes Thaler returning and pushing the man completely unprovoked.
Oh no, that was, yeah. Like I said, when sitting back, watching the whole room the whole time, it was just one thing after another after another. It's this magnet, this guy that's being a magnet for Andrew, he just couldn't let up. It was like it was just mad.
And he went over to
and so
Andrew,
or
Andrew went over
back.
to...
After Tanya protected him, he moved back away and made another snide remark to Mick Newman about his phone, and then walked straight past me to the right, away from everything. Then he veered back to the left, as a magnet does, to to Andrew, and he was on again, like he just went back, like he couldn't help himself, for no reason, for absolutely no reason.
Your test.
Yeah, he said he was bleeding. I didn't see any blood, but it might have been. His back was turned. But it could very easily. He's an older man. He could very easily have, have had a scratch from the, the other men, trying to hold him back. And he was showing it. He was showing the blood to Andrew, and then he just leaning into Andrew, and he was. But Andrew had his blood on his arm, so Andrew didn't put his arm out to wipe it on his blood. He put it on Andrew. So I cannot believe how nice and tidily and controlled Andrew moved him away from him. He didn't push or hit him, or he just got both of his arms. He got under both of his arms and put him away like a big baby. Quite frankly, yeah.
Higgins will go on to say, Thaler returned and pushed him in the chest. It was completely unprovoked.
He didn't push him in the chest. He had he grabbed him with both hands either side of his torso under his arms and moved him away.
Now, your testimony and the testimony from Mick is very different from that reported in the media. Why do you think that might be?
Well, yeah, I better put my tin hat on, hey? I think it's just part of a much bigger picture of, transparency is not allowed. That's that. And it's being triggered in our local councils. It's no different on every level of government, right through to world government. It's just, there's an agenda, it's going in a certain direction, and no, they don't want any exposure. They don't want any transparency. They want everything to keep going the way it's going. And Andrew's rocking the boat. There's a few councillors rocking the boat. Andrew is the one who's pushing back the hardest with all of the rubbish that's going on.
Were there any other bystanders that were mistreated or overlooked in this reporting?
I very much remember how upset Alisa was, and I know because, I've been like that myself when your voice starts to quiver because it's, traumatic. And Tanya, after that final kerfuffle ended, Tanya had a go at her. She was so inappropriate, so derogatory, and just being like a nasty bully in the playground, attacking Alisa at the end of it. absolutely appalling behaviour. And all I saw that whole time was Andrew trying to fend off someone who continually attacked him. And he did it very well. I don't think I would have done it that well. I'd be just a lot more. He's incredibly controlled,
Now,
considering the abuse he's copying.
we happen to have a few screenshots of the event. Would you mind explaining what you think happened during the first minute?
That first minute of the heckling, I like the word heckling. It's like he's just standing there. It's like, you know, I guess I'm probably the sort of person that will avoid aggressive people, especially when you know they're constantly targeting you. But, you know, he had every right to be standing where he's standing. He wasn't standing in their space. They came into his space inappropriately. You know, everyone's got their comfortable, energetic feel that that's your space around you. And they're constantly violating that. And but Andrew just stands there and watches. And that was what was happening in that first moment. At first, I guess that would have been the first minute or two.
And where is Summers during this scene?
I can't remember exactly where she was, but I do remember from the beginning and well into, you know, waiting for the police, just watching, just people watching, you know. And what I found most disturbing about a lot of the people in the room was they were enjoying it. There was lots of big cheesy grins from Tanya and Lynda. They just, or probably Lynda more than anything. She just loves conflict and aggression. She's got a grin from ear to ear more than once. And she was doing the same thing in the park when Andrew was being spat on. She was videoing and she had a grin from ear to ear. And then after he got spat on, her husband hit him. And she's videoing it with a grin from ear to ear. It's sick. And it's the same thing. It was just, she was totally entertained with the whole situation. So that's the whole Labor left-wing type of, you know, grubbiness that I've seen a pattern with, you know, a lot over many years of my life. And it was, you know, they all grouped together after it all and they're all happy and chatting, and, you know, all of us were quite solemn, waiting, you know, really concerned. This, you know, it wasn't a good thing that happened. It was inappropriate, and it was an awful experience. Not one of us was sitting there laughing and giggling, but it was like the us and them in the room. You know, it's like we're very seriously waiting for the police, and, you know,
who else was laughing and giggling during that time?
Well, there was the Pollards. There was Tanya and Lynda, and there was another couple as well that, you know, and he was leaning up against the pole the whole time with a smile on his face. It was all very entertaining.
Oh, that's very,
so
very sad. It's
not, you know.
And at what point does Lynda come in to replace Rawlings?
Oh, that was the middle part of the show after the heckling, and before Andrew got blood on him. It was just after the phone got taken, and that was David Rawlings' second time of getting between the two guys, and that's when Lynda came in and did her show, and I would call it nothing other than a show.
And she wasn't required, and she was aggravating the situation?
No, she was definitely not required. And it was definitely just a show. And it was, well, I guess I saw it, seeing it from the back, I was vividly noticed that, you know, how how Mick Pollard just let her take over. It's like, oh, I'm good now. Put his arms down, and she did her thing to try and create a story that didn't exist in the first place.
Finally, what do you want the public to understand about that night?
Look, the first time I met Andrew, I wasn't sure about him either. He was a bit controversial, but he was. We were in a group, and we were. He took his own time to come all the way from Nimrabel to Jindabyne. This is more than 5 years ago now. He was deep into crypto at the time, and crypto that was probably the good times or the beginning of the good times. And he wanted to help business owners learn about crypto and add crypto as an option for payment terms, like it's happening overseas in other countries. He wanted, and being a tourist town. So he contacted the chamber, and we all met with him, and he taught us about how the whole system works. I knew nothing. Some of us knew more than others. There was about 5 of us in the group. We went and had dinner. He made us open up. He made us download the app. He put $20 of his own money into everyone's account, and he said, here you go, play with it. And it was all about just helping people. We were at the bolo at one point, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle, not a kerfuffle, just a verbal kerfuffle around the fact that he's allowed to, sign in manually rather than, and there was a security guard there was being a bit smart-arsey, and they were just having a, what blokes do. They get a bit early, like, I'm tough, you're tough, I'm tough, you're tough. No, I'm tougher. Whatever, that was my opinion at the time, because it was the first time I met him, and I thought, oh, whatever, unnecessary. And but since then, I've just watched things happen. I've never thought I'd end up good friends with the Thaylors, but after the chamber decided to not invite him to a Meet the Candidates event, I thought, hang on, I didn't know, I really didn't know the guy from Borough Soap at the time. I just knew what they were doing was wrong. But it was the beginning of, becoming great friends with people who, I just like trust and honesty. Call a spade, open, transparent, simple. You always know what you're going to get. If you speak the truth, no matter what it is, he's always going to listen. But you smell a rat and he's, God help you. So, that's how we met, and I've watched over time, because I thought, I listened to both sides of the stories. I could see what people are saying. I could understand how they were thinking that way, and I wasn't always sure that I had the full story. It takes time. But, I think the final straw was all the latest stuff that went on with Rocky too. It's like, I could never work all of that Brumby stuff out and how it didn't add up. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. If you're doing the wrong thing, he's getting his spidey sense, he's seeing corruption, he's going to expose it. And that's what's happened with every single situation. And that's when he's been attacked. So I'm just really impressed with how he manages this constant attacking. I think, he's just got a really, really good, strong moral sense. And because he's, I don't know, what would you say, alpha? He's a blokey bloke, and, we probably need more warriors that will stand strong. And I think everyone has been, it's been educated out of most people to be soft and suck it up and don't speak out, and this whole tall poppy syndrome thingy that we've got going in Australia. It's terrible. I think, people are afraid of inner strength and honesty and conflict and being challenged. I don't care if you disagree with me. You tell me. What really pisses me off is if you don't tell me. Like, how is that a way to operate in life? You know, if we all dealt with a lot more honesty and transparency, there wouldn't be any war. Now, I don't think like anything is going to come, nothing's going to get sorted through politics either. I think it's all comes down to self-worth. You know, if there was more self-worth going on, people wouldn't be attacking, they wouldn't be lying, they wouldn't be deceitful. We wouldn't have this garbage going on in council. Every time Andrew, you know, pokes the bear, it's just this monstrous response. You know, if someone's going to attack me for something that isn't true, I'm going to say, hey, you're actually not true, but I'll show you. Let's come and have a look. You know, you're obviously misunderstanding something. Let's go here and I'll show you. You know, but when someone's done the wrong thing and they're, you know, being challenged, what's, you know, they're either going to move to a different town or are they going to push back inappropriately? And that's clearly what's happening.
Thank you, Nicole, for sharing your insights and for your support of the Monaro Zone. For those watching or listening, how can they get involved with the ratepayers and residents and support better transparency in our region?
Yeah, great. Look, we understand that council meetings are difficult to get to, but even if you can get to one every now and then, even if you can just pop in for an hour, do it. Keep an eye out on the council's website for the dates. We also keep all of the dates on our website, which is SMRRA.org. And the easiest way is just with the Ratepayers, SMRRA on Facebook, which is our public group. It's gets to be a little bit messy with the trolling every now and then, unfortunately. Bad people, you trolls, you've got to stop because it's just not doing the right thing. And but we do want to be able to keep the group public so we can put content up there and people can share it. But come and join the group. You know, help us pull the trolls back into line. You know, it's getting a lot better than it was. It was a little bit messy there for a way back, but we're really on to keeping it a safe and happy place for robust discussion. Talk about the topics. Don't bag out people, otherwise you get taken off. Very simple. And look, even if you don't contribute to conversation on the group, that's fine. But just keep an eye on it for what's going on, when the next meetings are and what the issues are. And of course, the Monaro Zone.
They make the rules, then twist them back. Keep the door shut, keep us off track. But we've got voices, we've got the will. We stand for the people, they never will. It's our home, it's our fight. We stand as one, we'll make it right. We face the flood, the fire, the strain. Independence rise, we'll break their chain. A Monaro strong, we won't be swayed. Truth and justice never fade. No backroom deals, no ties of gold. The truth's worth more than what's been sold. With every voice, with every stand, we take our power back hand in hand, hand in hand. It's our home. It starts today.